do with it. Somebody told me to put it on, so I will. This is the city. How many of you all remember that show? What's the name of it?
Dragnet.
Who are the two stars? Jack Webb and Harry Morgan. I always want to say Colonel Pop. And when I think of Harry Morgan, I think of Colonel Pop. But do you remember what Sergeant Joe Friday's, one of his favorite things to say to people, and this was one of the first Cops and Robbers shows, and he would be interrogating a witness, somebody who had seen what was going on. Anybody remember what he used to say to him in essence?
Just the facts.
Whoa, just, somebody turn this thing off, darn dang. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. That's all that Sergeant Joe Friday or John Johnson, isn't that all legalese? We just are looking for facts, not conjecture, not anything else. We're looking for facts. And you know, I remember that show from the late 60s and the bum, 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 and Sergeant Joe Friday looking very somber and very down across the table at whoever he was interrogating, and he would say, "The facts, ma'am, just the facts about whatever it was that he was trying to get information about." Well, this Easter Sunday morning, we want facts about what happened on Easter Sunday. What is the truth about Easter Sunday? Because Easter Sunday and all that it implies is the most important thing that we have to hang on to as Christians. And if you know, now it's not in the bulletin. I want to read from you from one of the accounts, just for a moment, down in the Gospels, about the resurrection and the post-resurrection time. This comes from the 16th chapter of Mark. Remember we read last week from Mark, so we've got a little bit of continuity going on. And it said, when the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. Now, I have this picture for the following verses of any three of you women, wherever you are, walking down the street, walking through Oak Court Mall, wherever it is, and here are these three women going to serve their Jesus, but they're just exactly like us, normal human beings. And they had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" You know, they were expecting to find the sealed tomb. They knew nothing about what was going to happen. When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. And as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were, parenthetically, rightfully so, alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, look, there is the place that they laid him. But go and tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee, and there you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were terrified. Would you not have been terrified had you not gone that morning? And nothing, absolutely nothing, was as you expected to see it. I want you to remember the facts that Mark just told us. How many women went? Do you remember?
Three.
Three. persons were waiting on them when they got there? One. What time of the day was it?
Early.
How early? How early according to the sunrise?
It had just risen.
It had just risen. It was after sunup. Now, the last 2 months, Ann and I have a rule that we've lived by pretty much for our entire marriage. We try and only do one sunrise a year. That's all I can handle. I don't like getting up that early. Well, we went on a sunrise balloon ride in Egypt over the Nile. That was one. This past Wednesday, I got up at 4:30 to go and be at the gate of the Masters in Augusta. And believe me, 4:30 precedes the sunrise big time. So I've had my 2 sunrises. Okay, so we've got those facts taken care of. Let's look over in John. Let's look over in John and see what the facts are there. Early on the first day of the week, when it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciples, the one whom Jesus loved. Okay, so we got 2 discrepancies right there real quick, don't we? Does it make a lot of difference? Really does. What we're looking for here are the facts, ma'am. The facts. And the fact of all 4 of the Gospels, well, let me throw one other thing in. If you read in Matthew, who knows what happened in Matthew when the stone was rolled away? Anybody remember? There was an earthquake. When they rolled the stone away, when the angel rolled the stone away, there was an earthquake that we don't see in any of the other Gospels. You know, there are these different recounts of it. But the facts of all 4 Gospels are, 1, the tomb is empty. If you really don't believe it, come on in and take a look. And in 3 of the 4, they go in and 2 of the 4 will tell you, and he or she believed. The fact is, Jesus was not there. And the fact is, the guard or guards told whoever was there, be it Mary, Mary Magdalene, Salome, whoever, he has risen, and you go and tell the others, and you will see him later. So we've got lots of stuff going on here that there's a little difference between Matthew, there's a little difference in Mark, there's a little difference in Luke, there's a little difference in John, but what I want us to know is that if you study these 4 accounts of the resurrection morning, of Easter Day, of why we gather on Sunday, the facts are the same. He died, he was buried, and when they went to look for him, he was not there. And the other thing that you find interesting in all 4 accounts of Jesus in the tomb is what the angel said. The angel said either, "Do not be alarmed," or "Fear not." Where else did we hear those words? At the Nativity. Isn't that interesting that what we have when Jesus started is the admonishment, "Fear not." And here Jesus is a week before his ascension, after his death, and we get those exact same words, "Fear not. Fear not, for behold, I bring you great tidings of good joy that shall be to," how many men and women? All men and women. Who are all men and women? You are. I am. We are. Great joy. Great joy, because God sent his Son to be born for us. And here, 33 years later, that man or those angels or whoever were sitting at the tomb, the empty tomb, knowing that Mary, and Salome were scared, knowing that if you and I went and looked in there and the stone was gone and Jesus wasn't there, we'd be afraid. What is it they reiterate that was said 33 years ago? Fear not. Because life is okay. God gave us Jesus. God allowed him to die. And God gave life back to him so that we could live life and fear not. Now, in Mark's Gospel, look and notice, or I hope you notice, that the angel said to the ladies, "Go and tell the disciples, and also tell Peter." And I think it's very interesting that Peter is the one that was singled out amongst the other 10 now. Judas has met his demise. And you got 11 total. And the angel says, "Go and tell the other disciples and Peter." And I have to scratch my head a little bit and wonder why was Peter singled out? Why was the one whom Jesus called Cephas, which means, upon this I will build my church? You know, why does the angel single out Peter, the one whom Jesus called Cephas, the one whom Jesus said, "Upon this rock I will build my church"? Why does he single Peter out? Conjecture. My conjecture. When I look through the scriptures and I look at the different disciples, you don't know a lot about most of them. You know, there was one that was a tax collector. That's about it. You know about John, and John was a little bit puffed up and had an ego because he was the one who Jesus loved. And John also wanted to know where he could sit when he was in heaven. Where did he want to sit? At the right hand. Well, Peter was kind of like we are. First of all, Peter was very, very rough-edged. He wasn't real polished. He was a fisherman. And Peter was always there. He was close to Jesus, but somehow or other, Peter didn't always get it. Remember when Peter and the others were in the boat, and Peter was out of the boat, and a storm came along, and Peter got scared. And Jesus said, "Come on, boy. Come on over here, fella. Come on, friend. I'll take care of you." And he held out his hand, and son of a gun, Peter started walking to Jesus on the water until he took his eyes off. And the minute Peter took his eyes off Jesus, the bad stuff started happening. Want me to tell you about my life? You want to tell me about your life? What happens when we take our eyes off of Jesus? What happens when we lose our focus on what he tells us in his word? Then the bad stuff starts happening. Peter was human. That's the main thing. He was impetuous. He acted without thinking. A Roman centurion confronted Jesus. Peter was with him. The Roman centurion said something, it makes no difference what, and Peter got ticked off because he was messing with his Lord. And what did Peter do to that centurion? What did he do? He whacked off his ear. Anybody know what his name was? This is great biblical trivia. Some of these folks that have been in my Sunday school class, you better remember that. The centurion's name was Malchus. And Peter chopped off his ear just because he got quickly ticked off. And Jesus admonished Peter. Jesus shook his finger and said, Peter, don't do that. Don't do that. But the last thing that two things why Jesus picked Peter. First of all, Peter was the one that Jesus looked at and said, "But who do men say that I am?" There have been other answers.